There's been some fun inaugural flights in the last year. We've even visited some on this channel. But what about one that will only operate one single time? This past week, I was out in American's Philadelphia hub for their one and only flight to São Paulo, Brazil. A flight that will operate once, and then never again. We'll look at the reasoning behind that, the messy and weird identity of Philadelphia's hub, look at American's backwards-facing business class seats, and more in this video, so feel free to use the timestamps in the description to look for exactly what you came here for. But for now, it's off to the city of brotherly love, as they call it. Welcome to Terminal A, which seems to handle all of the international flights in Philadelphia. American has a hub here that they inherited from US Airways, and truth be told, they're basically in every wing of the airport. Much like Dallas and Chicago, the business class check-in area isn't necessarily all that special. Honestly, it was kinda bleak with a couple self-serve kiosks and one very tired-looking agent. With no check bags and my boarding pass on my phone, however, I didn't really need it, so I headed up the escalator to security, which only has the 2 lanes and was moving real slow, taking a little over 15 minutes to get through. As mentioned, American is king here in Philadelphia, so there's no shortage of lounges. Terminal A, being the main international terminal, should have the largest facilities though, right? Well, US Airways actually had their Envoy lounge in Philly's Terminal A. Envoy being the name for their long-haul business class. So it was no stranger to flagship lounges, and they did decide to modernize a flagship lounge of their own here. As of 2019, American had begun designing flagship lounges for the most premium routes and passengers, aside from their Admirals Club. Philadelphia's lounge was announced in 2019, but then construction was halted until last year when it was announced that the project would finally continue. The closest lounge to our gate is actually the British Airways lounge, which is small and therefore limits code-share passengers. So the closest Admirals Club is in the East A wing of gates. I actually walked right past it at first as it was kind of tucked next to a gate. Opening the door though and heading down the stairs or elevator, you reach that lounge space. I know the current international lounges are under construction, but this is kind of wild to me. Seeing a one-room lounge with minimal seating and food options. I mean, the good thing is the sheer amount of lounges available, so once I realized that I wouldn't really even have a place to relax in this lounge, I just moved to the next lounge, which is definitely nicer, and most importantly, larger. This lounge, midway between the B and C gates in the main corridor, is a much nicer space to hang out. Not that it's hard to open doors, but I can't recall any other lounges with non-automatic doors. For starters, look at the size of this lounge. I mean, it just keeps going. It's gotta be one of the larger Admirals Clubs out there at the moment. There's all sorts of seats. Down the center of the lounge is partitioned off sections to provide tons of seating, with it still offering some modicum of privacy. Then along the sides of the lounge are some other enclaves that feel much more private, along with seating against the windows, and also some workspaces and printers available. There is a buffet section with a couple self-serve drink counters and a full-service bar. In the middle was the food options, which was more snacks than a full meal. My only reservations about the lounge is that it's missing showers, unless I missed something. Considering I just spent 8 hours traveling and had another 9 hours ahead of me, although I'd presume that's something the new flagship lounge will have. Honestly, I do really like the offerings of this lounge, considering it's largely a domestic lounge. I do feel the furnishings are a bit dated to the early 2000s or early 90s, but it made for a great way to spend an hour. So what's so special about this journey? American was going to fly from Philadelphia to São Paulo, a route that doesn't see service at the moment. The reason lies in the NFL, or American football, the highest grossing sports league in the world by far, even if half the world hates on it all the time. The NFL has spread around the globe, drawing major attention and travelers to their international games, such as Munich, London, Mexico City, and now Brazil. This is the first week of the new season, and the day after this flight, the second game of the season will be played in São Paulo between the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles. So why am I, a San Francisco 49ers fan, going? Well, I am a football fan, and also what a fun and strange flight to experience. That doesn't mean I'm not decked out in my Niners gear though. I mean, here's the home field of the Eagles. Now, Niners-Eagles is one of the more heated rivalries in sports. Now I know what you're thinking, why am I here when the flight was clearly created for Eagles fans? Well, in 2022, the 49ers played in Mexico City against the Arizona Cardinals. My dad and I went, and there was a particular group of Eagles fans who were there, specifically poking at and taunting different Niner fans on the celebratory flight from San Francisco to Mexico City. So I figured it was only fair that I got to participate in their flight as well. And oh boy, did they let me know how they felt about that. Getting plenty of boos and comments from the Eagles fans seeing me and my redness behind enemy lines. The day before this flight, the team actually flew down on this route with a 777-300, so they had a full day before game day to adjust, as did the Packers. This flight flies down on Thursday, arriving Friday morning. The game is Friday night, and then the aircraft returns on Saturday to Philadelphia with presumably the same crew. And then that's it. Unless American decides to officially announce this route, which it doesn't sound like they have the plans to do, the plane will return to its regularly scheduled programming, and Philly citizens going to Brazil will have to go back to connecting in New York, Miami, or Dallas. My main problem with this lounge, however, is that sure, it's the best lounge for international passengers at the moment, but it is a roughly 20-minute walk to the gate, so definitely leave yourself enough time. Speaking of the gate, you'd imagine that a one-time flight for sports fans would have a celebration, and they definitely did. At gate A21, they had the Eagles fight song on repeat, which made me think two things. One, I wish they had other songs mixed in, and two, that the Niners have a better one. The celebration was different from any other inaugural. We had, of course, Eagles crew like Swoop the mascot and the cheer team members, which just makes me think, don't they also need to be going to Brazil? Or are we not doing mascots and cheerleaders at that game? In addition, they had all kinds of Eagles merch for purchase, jackets, shirts, souvenirs, and more, all for purchase right at the gate. They did give away a free Fly Eagles Fly shirt in conjunction with American Airlines, but I figured I didn't need to have a shirt of the rival, so I stuck to the snacks. We got the spread of plantain chips, roast beef sandwiches, and other Brazilian-influenced snacks. Always the best part of any pre-flight celebration. There was pins and portable chargers, which I was more than happy to get one of. A GRU pin, and a Fly Eagles Fly portable charger, or at least the wrapper was. The charger itself was just American Airlines. Celebration aside, people were jonesing to get on board. Group 1 passengers had been queued starting 30 minutes before boarding, so we may not have been the first person on board, but still got on board with enough time to get a couple shots at this cabin. The cabin in question, by the way, has a somewhat normal 1-2-1 setup with herringbone type seats, but with one major difference. The even-numbered window seats and the odd-numbered middle seats face rearward. This is something we've tried before, but it makes for a fun experience on takeoff and landing as the G-forces feel all weird. Not to mention, you can look out your window and have a great view of the wing and engine without craning your neck. Not only this, but I found the rearward-facing seats to be more private than the forward-facing seats, and because of the forces on landing, they're the only ones without shoulder straps. This cabin, by the way, is only found on their 787-8s. Even the larger 787 has more standard all-forward herringbone setups. The seat setup is a bit different than the one we covered in the recent video from Chicago to Athens. This one's got a mechanically adjustable headrest even if the seat itself is basically the same. Along the aisle is the control panel where the remote for the TV is, under a reading light and this little panel to adjust the seat controls and privacy settings. The counter is next to that, large enough for a computer but also houses the tray table, which is kind of a unique shape, albeit a good size. Below that is a pocket with enough tension to snap a computer in half, and a little pocket that guarantees you'll leave something in it. You can also see the forward-facing seats and how it's a bit more open with no counter along the aisle. In front is the TV and footrest, the footrest having storage underneath it for shoes since you can't have your bag down there for takeoff and landing, and the TV is released with the press of a button on the seat shell. Unfortunately, these seats have one less window just due to their shape, but the benefits include a charging pocket with 2 USB ports and 2 universal charging ports, so you can bet your butt that all your stuff arrives charged. Below the counter is another literature pocket that was a bit larger as well. We also, overhead, do have individual air vents. Shout out to the 787-8 for that. Amenity-wise, I started with a sparkling water with lemon. We also got the great but heavy Bang & Olufsen headphones and a pair of slippers. The big bag of bedding gets rid of single-use plastics, which I love, and has a good size and firm pillow along with a comforter. I love the white color, but wonder what the cleaning of these is like. The amenity kit we were given is their new business class kit with updated amenities and eye mask. I do like the feel of the lotion, but miss the scent of the old one. On a quick side note, I think my window might have astigmatism, bro. I mean, as soon as I could see stuff out the window, the lights were all blurry and stretched. Anywho, the market between Brazil and the US is ginormous, as they're the largest countries in North and South America due to population, so there's plenty of business, vacation, and people of reciprocal heritage traveling between the two countries. Brazil is actually the second largest Latin aviation market in the US, only after Colombia, which had double the amount of flights Brazil had as of a year ago. This isn't to say that Brazil doesn't have a large market, however, with 300 to 400-ish flights per month between 6 airlines, 3 US carriers, United, Delta, and American, and 3 Brazilian carriers, Azul, Gol, and Latam. Of those, Latam had the highest amount of seats per month, even if United and American offered more flights. Even in the last couple of years, we've seen Brazilian market growth with new nonstop services like Los Angeles and additional services to places like Orlando. Even still, there are a number of US cities on the radar of carriers looking to add services, specifically San Francisco, considering it had the 6th most Brazilians of US metro areas, yet still lacks nonstop service to anywhere in South America, even being a major United hub. As for American Airlines, they have some of the most flights of any airlines between the US and Brazil. If you find yourself at the airport during the day, you'll likely see the aircraft sitting out at remote parking. This is because, to optimize flight times and connections, it's normal practice for aircraft to arrive in Brazil in the morning and return in the evening, which brings up issues because obviously airplanes lose money on the ground. To combat this, roughly 7 years ago, American built a large hangar in São Paulo, allowing them to clean and maintain their aircraft during the day, fixing squawks and cosmetic issues prior to its return to the US, so that there's no time wasted, and once it does get back to the US, it can take off for its next adventure. I didn't feel the need to cover the entertainment system since we've covered it in a couple recent videos, but they do have a good assortment of titles even if the interface is a bit laggy. I did check out the Wi-Fi. At first it wasn't showing up even after resetting the Wi-Fi a couple times. Then once it did show up, it took a while to connect even to the AA in-flight portal. Every time I tried to purchase Wi-Fi, it would take forever to get to the right page, and it would always end up resetting, and I was never able to actually purchase the Wi-Fi, which sucks because I was planning on getting some work done on this flight. Looking at the menu, we were planning to eat 2 meals on this flight. After departure was a full dinner service with starter, main course, and dessert. Then mid-flight snacks in the galley, and lastly was a breakfast before arrival. With a hot towel, the dinner service was upon us, followed shortly after with the placemat. To start the meal, we got the normal bowl of nuts, and I, of course, had to go with a Dr. Pepper, something only found on the Texas-based airlines and newly the #1 soda choice for Americans. Then came the one-tray service. It definitely gets points taken away for the one-tray service, and I know y'all will share your opinions on this type of service, but what I will say is that recently I've found that the quality of the food is getting better. We got a romaine salad with balsamic vinaigrette and an eggplant caponata, with artichoke and feta cheese and the pretzel roll that I chose from the basket of breads. The main course I chose was the short rib, one of Americans' most chosen main courses, and I actually found it to be cooked to near perfection, coming alongside asparagus and a lobster mac and cheese. Honestly, I've started to really like the new American Airlines dining options, which I know is probably a hot take. The meal wrapped up with dessert service and I had to choose the ice cream sundae. It sounds like some of y'all disagree with the ice cream sundae dessert choice, but honestly, I feel there's not much better than a customized ice cream and toppings to end any meal. Looking at the bed, we can move the seat pieces individually or with presets, and although it moves in a funny way, it does get fully lie flat. The pillow's a great size and firm enough to not need supplementing. The comforter is plenty large and cozy, and when coupled with the overhead vents, you can set whatever temperature you need for sleep. Then you can adjust the suite lighting to dim it for sleep, and set the privacy to not be disturbed, signaled by a light outside the suite, and we were all handed a bottle of water shortly after the lights were dimmed. One of the benefits of this seat setup is that the inverse seat design seems to allow for a slightly wider footrest. And since the TV folds into the wall, you've got plenty of space to move, able to sleep basically however you want, even if the turbulence and Brazilian convection made for a bumpy ride. Perhaps my main critique of the alternating forward and aft facing seats is that there's not a ton of privacy. Unless everyone's asleep, there's always someone, maybe 2 people, who can see you. I also wanted to see what kinds of mid-flight snacks were available in the galley. They had a spread for people to grab from anytime they got hungry along the way, anything from a small sandwich to chips, and then whatever drink you wanted besides water you could ask for. One thing that kinda stumped me was that the snacks were in the front galley on a cart, but the galley behind the business class actually had a dedicated snack section. It may be dark, but you can see the large counter for snacks and the shelf above it where the drinks would go. Above that is a TV with the in-flight map playing and a spotlight that were off at the moment. I just find it odd to not use a space like this. Here you can see, just after the sun rose, a little bit better view of this space. It would be a great place to come hang out and get some snacks and mingle with other passengers in the flight. Kinda weird, they chose not to use it. Our crew was actually incredible, and one of the things the purser mentioned was that the right lavatory, one of the 3, is the handicapped restroom, meaning it had some extra space to get changed into PJs. Unfortunately, that one was always occupied when I wanted to get up, but you can see the fairly standard lavatory in one of the other 2 business class lavs. With an average 787 lavatory, it's nice to see the fake wood backsplash, giving that American touch to it, although it's a bummer not to have any sort of amenities available. Before long, the lighting came up slightly, somewhat resembling a sunrise, as I figured it was time for our breakfast. We were given 2 options, the hot meal or the cold meal, both obviously listed in the menu as well. I decided to go with the hot option, which was an American breakfast with scrambled eggs, tomato, bacon, and potatoes, alongside fresh fruit and choice of biscuit, roll, or pastry. And I chose the apple juice to go with it. About that time, we also reached 45 minutes from landing, meaning the flight attendants came through to collect the headsets, one of the biggest drawbacks with Americans' long-haul flights. They do at least give us these non-noise cancelling earbuds, which is better than nothing, but it does suck to lose the nice big headphones. We're switching things up a little bit today, doing our final thoughts during our descent instead. First off, one weird quirk I noticed is that the cabin announcements were only made in English. On all other international flights I've been on, they make the calls in the language of the origin and destination, so I'd expect Portuguese, but I guess not today. American Airlines long-haul business class reminds me of Delta's if we look at the hard product. And before y'all say how crazy I am, hear me out. They have varying onboard products, so you have to pay attention to which aircraft you book. They also place more emphasis on some hubs, more so than others, including but not limited to flagship lounges at only some hubs. Soft product-wise, it seems to be different on every flight. It seems to be that way on all North American carriers, honestly, US, Canada, and Mexico. Some flights it's one of the best meals you've ever had, and other times it's a miserable experience. I just wish that dinners at least could move away from a one-tray service. It just feels less personal, and now without first class, business class is the highest level of service most of the time, and it would be great to see some of the personal touches brought into this cabin level of service. I will say that I do prefer the product of the 787-8 over the 787-9. That's just because the Dash 9 has the most standard reverse herringbone seats. At least this one has some special touches, as does the 777s. If only these 787-8s didn't have that weird tint on it, putting everything in a slight sepia filter. Honestly, I might have to fly Qatar or Emirates again because I've ended up thinking that these North American carriers aren't that bad, which is an opinion that doesn't seem to be shared by others. On the bright side at least, I did spend a trip in Brazil here and didn't get robbed for the first time in a couple years, so we're going to put that in the win column for Patrick. American Airlines and Philadelphia have had a messy history since the 2015 merger with US Airways. At the time of the merger, US Airways had 3 hubs for international services: Phoenix, Charlotte, and Philadelphia, Charlotte having the most flights and Philadelphia having the most long-haul flights, with just under 20 European routes, as opposed to Charlotte having just over 5. For a time, US Airways almost merged with United, being that they were both Star Alliance. Then United chose Continental and US Airways shifted to American, where they were able to provide a framework to help a currently financially struggling American Airlines, merging to create the world's largest carrier, a title still held to this day 9 years later. This positioned American Airlines to hold international flights out of 8 of their 9 hubs, with DC still maintaining a distance restriction and security restraints. Philly was always US Airways' premium hub. It saw their largest long-haul network, flagship lounges, and aircraft. American actually kept most US Airways narrow bodies, but used COVID as the perfect excuse to shed US Airways aircraft capable of intercontinental flights, including the 757s and A330s, both of which were Philly's most common aircraft. American also canceled US Airways' A350 order, opting for 787s instead. So the question remained, what the heck do they do with these former US Airways hubs? After all, American always wanted success in New York, and the proximity to Philly made it strange to carry flagship hubs at both locations. After COVID, while working on the plan for the step-sibling home, American rebuilt basically every hub except Philly. Having retired the common Philadelphia-based aircraft and routes, there wasn't much need, considering the main draw of this hub is connecting passengers, and the routes they were connecting to no longer existed. I actually find it kind of funny because the American legacy hubs like New York, Miami, and Chicago had these big flashy renovated areas, lounges, and the best of their products, which the former US hubs like Charlotte, Phoenix, and Philadelphia were clearly getting the scraps, and improvement wasn't high on the priority list. Recently, however, it seems that might be changing, as American has long been debating whether or not to supplement or replace their New York hub with Philadelphia, stating that Philadelphia is a great replacement for the oversaturated JFK. I mean, US Airways gave JFK slots to Delta way back when, and then once they took over at American, they had to re-strategize their way back into the New York market. With multiple failed attempts, they claimed that American was too small to compete, but too big to give up. This changed when JetBlue and American Airlines signed an interline partnership, which grew their presence and connections in New York, much like United was currently doing across state lines in Newark. During that time, the New York market drew in the highest amount of new Advantage members and credit card signups, and it seemed that American was finally solidifying its share in New York, stated in articles from A View from the Wing. Unfortunately, the partnership was shut down by the government, and rather than appeal it, JetBlue decided to focus their acquisition of Spirit, which obviously didn't work, so maybe we see the partnership return, as it sounds like the airlines are considering appealing the previous decision. So how does this relate to Philadelphia? Well, when the partnership ended, American didn't feel that New York was as critical of a focus, and has moved a share of flights from the New York market to Philadelphia, and added some new ones such as Copenhagen, Naples, Nice, and the ultra-flashy Doha service. Here's the problem. New York has a giant local network with tons of originating and terminating passengers. Philly, however, is largely a transfer hub, where people from domestic flights transfer to these flights. This also draws in less foreigners, since people from Europe or Asia would fly American solely as a way to get to New York. But those people probably don't want to go to Philadelphia, so they'll look to other carriers. Take a look at the Doha route, for example. This route largely saw people from New York transiting through Doha on partners going to India and the Middle East. Moving that flight to Philly means they're largely banking on people flying to Philly, transiting to the Doha flight, and then transiting again in Doha. A bold move when airlines like Qatar and Emirates fly to so many US destinations already, eliminating the need for a double transfer. I'm sure the A321 XLR will help Philly, as it'll offer many more low-capacity options. Perfect for Philadelphia's lower demand, leaving the wide bodies to fly their routes from Chicago, New York, and Miami. Of which, I don't see American leaving New York, by the way. In the grand scheme of things, it's one of the world's most connected cities, and they have brand new facilities in American's Terminal 8 there. Long story short, Philly is a strange hub for American. I see why they thought it would be important with their New York struggles, but it just can't be compared, in an aviation sense or otherwise, if you're really going to be the world's largest airline. As always though, let me know your thoughts down below, and until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.